Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the Gilbert Gottfried of board game review shows.
I'm just saying!
Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to take a look at Mr. Jack from Hurrican. Before the review, first tonight's The Discriminating Gamer Pop Music Quiz. In 1985, British musician Paul Young recorded the hit Every Time You Go. For an autographed copy of my autobiography, Cody Dazzle Me, what American pop star wrote that song? The answer at the end of this video. Mr. Jack from Hurrican is a two-player game in which one player takes on the role of the evil Jack the Ripper and the other a detective desperately trying to find him. The game board is a map of London. It's going to have various hexes. Some are just streets that the characters can move through. Some are buildings. There are kind of lights and lanterns. There's also kind of open manholes through which characters can move. At the beginning of the game, both of you must decide who is going to be Jack and who is going to be the detective. Now, whoever plays Jack is going to draw an alibi card, which is going to contain one of the characters on there. That is you. You are that character as Jack the Ripper. And you could be any one of these characters. Sherlock Holmes, Inspector Lestrade, Watson. You could be a police captain. You could be this kooky chick that likes to move through walls. You can be all sorts of fun and different and interesting people, some of them based on the Sherlock Holmes mythos, even some of the actors that portrayed Sherlock Holmes. Now, you have a pile of the alibi cards, again, essentially saying who Jack the Ripper isn't, and then you also have a stack of character cards. These are the character cards that are on the board. Now, what's going to happen is every turn, you've got kind of a turn tracker there. Every turn tracker, you are going to go ahead and reveal 4 of those character cards, half of the character cards. Now, what's going to happen is, on alternating turns, it'll be the Jack player will draw 1 and play it, then the detective will draw 2 and play it, then Jack will draw a final one. And then that will swap back and forth. And what's happening here is you're essentially taking on the role, or rather manipulating, I should say, those characters on the board. The characters can move a number of spaces, up to a number of spaces, and then they either must perform an action or they can do an action as an option. Now, some of these actions, for instance, Watson has a lantern. It illuminates everything in a row. Will illuminate everything in front of him, and I'll explain why that's important in a minute. One of the characters can move manholes, can board up manholes and move the manhole cover. Some can swap the lanterns around the board. Some of them, as I say, the one female character has the ability to kind of move through buildings, which is something nobody else can do. So there's all sorts of different abilities, and Sherlock Holmes has a really cool one. He can actually take an alibi card, so he can see who the Jack the Ripper is not. Now, if Jack plays that card, then that's just one less card that the other guy will be able to check up on. Now, at the end of every round, the Jack player has to manipulate this card, either say, I'm visible, or I cannot be seen. Now, they are visible if they are on a lantern location, or if they are next to another character. If they are not adjacent to a character, if they're not on a lantern place, or if Watson isn't shining his lantern at them, then they are invisible. Now, this is going to be important to helping the detective deduce, well, if he is invisible, then it must be one of these characters, and that's every round. That's going to help him get closer and closer to figuring out who it is. But here's the thing. Jack must move his character off of the board. There are 4 possible exits, but 2 of them at any given time are going to have kind of policemen there. And when you play Lestrade, you can actually manipulate the policeman and move the policeman, so it can be very difficult for the person to get out. Now, you go back and forth like this. Each round you remove one of the lantern spaces, and each round the detective is trying to narrow down. He's going to try to move characters toward the light, on lighted spaces or adjacent to characters so he can kind of see, but he's got to be careful because he doesn't want to do that too much. He's got to try to play it very, very smart, and so too does Jack as he tries to get away. Now, the game will end in one of 3 ways. Now, the policeman, the detective, can win the game if he successfully deduces who Jack the Ripper is and lands on top of him with one of the other characters and essentially says, "You're Jack." If he does that, and indeed Jack has been caught, the detective wins the game. But if the Jack the Ripper character escapes from the board, or if if the detective makes a wrong accusation, Jack can escape and Jack can win. So depending on who's able to bluff who and fool who better here, that's who's going to win Mr. Jack. Mr. Jack is a game that's been around for a while. It's a Bruno Cathala game. I can't remember the other designer, but it's a very clever game in a lot of ways, in a lot of respects. Now, it's a short game, 20, 30 minutes. These are not long games. I suppose it could go on longer, but really the games I've played have been pretty brief and pretty to the point. But it is a fun and it's an engaging game. I actually really like Mr. Jack for what it is. If this were a much longer game, I don't know that I'd like it. To be blunt, it doesn't hold a candle to, say, Letters from Whitechapel, which is a much superior Jack the Ripper game. But of course, that's multiplayer and it's a lot more in depth and there's a lot more going on. But for what this is, I think it's a fun social, well, I don't want to say social deduction game, but it's a fun deduction game and it's a fun bluffing game, a double bluffing game. And I really think it works. It brings out a lot of interesting twists and turns, and it's just fun. I actually really quite enjoyed this. So the recommendation for the discriminating gamer for Mr. Jack is buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer. And now, the answer to tonight's pop music quiz. Daryl Hall. Daryl Hall of Hall & Oates. And let me see who our winner is of my autobiography. Checking the comments. Zach Zembrunnen. Zach Zembrunnen of West Jordan, Utah. You are the winner of my autobiography. Good night, everybody.
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Jack?